This is Tim Hammer with your devotion taken from 1 Samuel chapter 30, beginning with verse 20. The demands of leadership never let up on David. He had just successfully conquered the Amalekites, who had taken captive his family as well as all the other family members of the men that traveled with David. They had also taken the plunder from the city of which they lived in, but they also had plundered other cities, and they had taken capture all the plunder from all those cities as well. Now David was at a critical point as he began to make the journey back with his family and all of the plunder, and as he came to the ravine where he had left 200 men because they were too exhausted to travel on, there was a dispute that broke out among David's men. In verse 22, we find that there were evil men and troublemakers that were numbered among David's army. You have to remember that David had an army that was made up of misfits and the social rejects from any area around, and so he had a difficult time just keeping the army intact. But we find as they got ready to divide the plunder, that was what the evil and the troublemakers wanted to do, that David made a very strong statement. He pointed out that, as they had said earlier on their way back, this is David's plunder. If you go to verse 20, they had already acknowledged that David was in the leadership role to make the decision regarding the plunder. But David didn't take that for his own personal gain. In fact, if you go on, you find that he said, with what the Lord has given us in verse 23. David could have very easily said, yes, this is mine and all mine, and you can't have any of it. But in reality, David realized the only reason he had what he had was because God had blessed him with what he had given him. And had David selfishly taken that all into himself, not only would it have created problems between him and the Lord, it would have created problems between him and his men that he was trying to hold desperately together. But David showed spiritual wisdom in that he said, this that has been given to us is not from our own doings, but this is because we have been blessed by the Lord. And so David made a decree. He actually made a law, the Bible tells us in these verses, that each man would share equally among the plunder. But then David showed some real leadership skills as well. Remember, he had taken the plunder back that was not only his, but the plunder from the other cities that the Amalekites had taken from other cities, so he had a large portion of plunder. He took and he divided that among all the areas where he had traveled before, indicating that David was a very diplomatic individual and realized that by sending a gesture or a gift to these areas that he had traveled amongst before, that he would seal a permanent relationship in the future as far as having good terms with them. The demands of leadership on David were many, but even in the heat of the moment, David showed some real dependency upon God to give him wisdom and to give him direction. I've always made the statement that we are all leaders. It may be of leadership in our home. It may be leadership at work. We are all leaders. The question is, what kind of leaders are we? Hopefully we're the leaders that when God blesses us, that we would not take it unto ourselves, but that we would want to share it with those around us. But most importantly, we would want to share it with the Lord and not rob God of the credit that it's because of him that we have what we have.